Yeah, it's pausing. You're frozen again. Uh-oh. You're frozen. Uh-oh. You're back, but you're a little fuzzy. Hopefully we don't lose you again. You were frozen for quite a while. Oops, you're frozen. Yeah, you're having, it's definitely frozen. It's definitely freezing up. Whoop. Hmm. Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been in sales and marketing my entire career. I've had a really good run at sales. I've also been known sometimes as like the territory flipper, or I've been known as someone who can just literally change things. And I didn't really think so much about that myself too much. It was more of leadership that kind of had to tell me that I had something unique in that area. And so I obviously went on to pursue learning from John Maxwell, who I feel is one of the best, right? For me, it was like if you can help inspire change in people, I wanted that's part of the whole mission at Maxwell Leadership, as well as, the disc profile just basically helps you determine how you can interact with people from different perspectives, because we're all born with innate qualities of how we communicate and how we relate to people. And if you can learn your style and then learn how to relate to other people, it just helps you become a better communicator, a better partner in life, a better friend, or whatever. If you can learn how to communicate with different styles. And so it's something that's very typically done in the corporate environment. They use the disc profile quite a bit. But it's something that I would encourage anybody to really just learn more about themselves and learn how you can relate to other people in your lives better just by understanding your own style. Yeah, I guess so. There's so many different tests that are out there, right? That people go through to learn their different communication styles. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could do a very farewell kind of comparison to that. It's just interacting from your communication style. I mean, DISC stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. So those are different fields of how you relate to people. And, sometimes if you're struggling in situations, you just learn your style. And then it basically teaches you how to communicate with somebody that is different from you, kind of the words to say, how to interact with people. So it's a very valuable tool. Mhm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's pretty easy to pick out certain personalities. I mean, my undergrad was in psychology too, so I think that kind of helps a little bit. But I think once you kind of learn how somebody talks or somebody's style, you know that they're a certain personality. And a lot of times, if you're like me, I'm somebody who's very extroverted, very outgoing, very bubbly, like could easily talk to somebody. But if you're talking to somebody who's not like that, you just need to learn how to tone it back. Especially for me, like I deal with physicians all the time, and a lot of times they're not the happy go lucky, excited person. They're very serious and they want, certain things done a certain way. And when you understand that, even in your speech, even when you're presenting data to them or when you're having communication to them, you know that there's a certain way that they like it presented to them. And so you course correct yourself to aligned to have that conversation with somebody. And a lot of times it has a lot to do with being very aware of people's body language too. I think a lot of people, that's a part of the problem I notice in sales sometimes, is that people have an agenda that they come with, that they want to sell something. And so they're prepared to just kind of tell their story without a lot of times picking up on clues. And body language can be a really big one too, to pick up on somebody. And if you're not paying attention to that, you can kind of overstep your bounds sometimes. No, I sometimes almost to a fault. Sometimes, like even they say if you can mirror somebody how they're doing something, sometimes I do it so much that I almost start talking like the person. So I have to be careful because I don't want anybody to think that I'm imitating them. It's just a natural thing for me to kind of mirror. If they're sitting back, I sit back. If they shake hands, I shake hands. So it's just a style. And sometimes I just go into automatic mode, and then sometimes my voice even changes, which is something I need to be careful of as well. Well, I think it depends, right? I think sometimes people do things to try to impress the audience that they're with, and I think that's almost forced, right? Like I think I know what you're talking who you're talking about, and I felt that that was more forced or trying to be somebody that they're really not, in front of somebody versus you being respectful and understanding of who you're dealing with and adjusting your tone and your style, your body language, whatever is making the other person feel comfortable, right? But so it's not pretending to be somebody that you're not, but it's being more sensitive to their character and style. Yeah, maybe you could repeat that question because you froze a little bit there, so I missed part of it. So if you could repeat that, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, if I think of back in my early career, I was pretty insecure. It wasn't something that was easy for me as far as the confidence. I mean, the confidence came as I got more familiar with what I was doing and what I was selling. And I remember one of the first times, very early on in my career, and I had called on a physician and he said, "Oh, come back. I really want to see you." And I really thought he really did want to see me. And he came back and he just like was extremely like rude and said something. And I was so young in my career, I didn't know what to do. And I actually left the office crying. And I'm not somebody that cries that often. And I left and I went and I visited another one of my physicians who I really trusted that was like down the hall. And he's like, "Oh, he does that to everybody." So, what it had done for me is it turned me from allowing somebody like that to hurt my feelings to basically it was basically a lesson that I had learned that I was like not going to let somebody like that, you know, dull my shine by any means with and just part of it is I think in psychology, right, they said if somebody is a difficult person to deal with, which in this case it was, right? There's something underlying that individual. It's either fear, hurt, or frustration. And if you can figure out which three of those it is and try to resolve the issue with one of those, with those, in mind, a lot of times you can get over that. So like, let's say if somebody's like really angry and frustrated, instead of me trying to like oversell or try to do something, I would literally say, gosh, it sounds like you're really frustrated about a situation. Would that be accurate? Right. So it's mainly like really trying to get to their heart in a way that some people would just normally maybe blow somebody off like that if they're being rude. But when you hit them kind of head on and they're kind of going, oh, well, I guess she's picking up something I'm throwing down, right? Um, yeah. Well, I mean, to me, the difference between me, I think, is I've always tried to get to somebody's heart, no matter who it is, right? I mean, if I have an agenda, I have to go in and you're supposed to sell something, and I get that, right? But I want to find out more about who this person is that I'm talking to. And it to me, it's more like, how do you like to communicate with people? What is your style? Try to find out more about them. Like, how do you like to be communicated with? Do you like in person? Do you like virtual? Do you like emails? Do you like text message? Like, how is it the best way for me to communicate with you? And then they'll tell you, right? So, and then some people are just if as long as you know your technical information and you know where you need to get to, I try to always limit myself to three top priorities that I'm going to ask somebody and then be done with it, right? I'm not there to like babble away and waste somebody's time. I'm trying to get to the heart of the matter, and more it's like trying to find out what their issue is. So if I can resolve it, then we're doing great. I don't always feel like, I mean, there are people that are arrogant for sure, but I think in most, but for the most case, I think, when you really try to find out from them what it is that they need, what is it underlying for them that is purposeful, right? Because you don't want to waste their time. I think if they realize that you're not there to waste their time, because that's the thing that bothers them, right? Like, oh, here's another person that's going to take up another 5 or 10 minutes of my time when I need to be seeing my patient. So what do you want? Right. So to me, it's like, I start off the conversation by saying, hey, I know you're really busy, but I only have two or three things, whatever I have on a little bullet point, whatever that I want to talk to you. Is now a good time, or is it better for me to come back another time? And with that, there's been times when they've said, you've got 5 minutes, right? And then I tell them what I want to say. And then all of a sudden that 5 minutes has turned into 45 minutes, or it's turned into come in my office and have a conversation with me, right? Because they know you're smart, you're not wasting their time, you're asking for permission, and then that opens doors. Well, I don't know how far I want to get into that, but yeah, I mean, I was a single mom at the my age of my kids, 2 and 3. I was in a let's say a very tumultuous, abusive relationship that I needed to exit, and it was very frightening as a mother of a 2 and a 3 year old that like needed to kind of figure it all out, right? And there was like several series of things that had happened in during that time that kind of escalated. For example, I was in court for 16 years. And so, you know, it wears on you financially, emotionally, but you still had to perform, right? You still had to be in your job and do all of that. And honestly, raise kids. Yeah. Kids, make sure they had a roof over their house. Yep. So, yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest fear you have, right, is that you never want to lose your job, right? Like that's like a super big thing that you're always concerned about. And so, yeah. So, I mean, so you get really worried about that, right? And then, of course, when you're in court, it's just interesting because it's you walk out. You first of all, you're never case number one, and you sit there and you listen to everybody's story. And if you can imagine that 16 years times, I don't know, 5 times, 6 times a year, you have to do that and you walk out, it's like you all you can think about is like all I got to do is take care of my kids, right? Like I mean, you just got you have to focus. And there were many times like at nighttime, especially at 2 and 3, right? Where you're like, oh, I need some milk. And I'm like, oh, I can't get it because they're in bed, right? And I can't run to the store. So, and exactly, no. And I mean, I did. I had colleagues that literally asked me, they're like, I don't know how you do it, Lila, because I mean, I've got a wife, I got kids, and I don't know how you did it. So, but you don't think about those things, right? You just do them. And you you work harder to make sure that you have the things that you have because you always think like you don't ever want to lose your job, right? That's like the most important thing to me. So, yeah, I mean, as far as like into the entrepreneurial space, or is that what? Yeah, it just kind of evolved, it was just kind of something that always interests me. It really is at the heart of my passion. And I think because when I approach anything that I do, I'm always known as the out of the box thinker. I'm always trying to think how I can get something done rather than I can't get something done. There's people that just say I can't, or they won't, or there's no access, or there's whatever. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, how can I? Who can I call? Right. So I've always been considered a connector, and I love connecting with people. I love learning what other people do. And I just get, I don't know, I just get inspired by doing things the entrepreneurial way too. And it's just an out of the box mindset, I think, that I have, that I just love. And I just love to explore different ideas and talking to people about what they do. And then I just catch the bug, right? The entrepreneurial bug as well. Oh gosh, I mean, I think everything I've done at my full capacity, to be honest with you. But I think some of the entrepreneurial companies, or the things that I had worked with that ended up failing, not because of anything, we did or the team did as a whole. I think it would have been great. Like, I had plenty of opportunity to be part of startups, and had teams. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, those didn't, come to be. But I think, honestly, if one of those could have popped, or I could have been involved in something like that, I would have loved that opportunity to really see it to its success. And mainly the people that I hired, right, as well, to be successful. Oh yeah, I mean, I've worked with three startups that unfortunately failed, and that was pretty harmful, right? Because I hired great people. I loved the people that I worked with, and unfortunately, when companies close their doors, or they run out of money, or there's something that's not done at the top of the leadership, and it causes it to fail, you know, I mean, I feel like there's always something that you learn from that and that you take from that, so that you don't, so that doesn't get recreated, hopefully, in the future, right? So, but there's no givens in life, right? You just have to kind of go through things and find out what happens along the way. And they're all lessons learned. I always learn something from every situation and, take it with me for the future. You are, yeah. Yeah, I think it's true. Like, I think every company, I think, look, a lot of it is the good old boys club in a lot of different ways. Fortunately for me, I mean, I have a lot of wonderful men relationships that have been friendships for like a long, long time. And so for me, it was, a lot of reasons. That's kind of actually why I went back and I got my MBA, right? Because I'm like, I want to be kind of looked at as being equal or par to somebody. And so I thought, even though everybody kept telling me, you don't need your MBA, Lila, we're going to promote you, like, for sure, don't worry about it. But I felt like it would only help me, it would only be beneficial for me. And then it was just being focused on delivering results, earning the respect, and just doing my job. And a lot of times, you know I was very well accepted, you know um, as a whole. Oh, I believe so. I think women always feel like we have to prove ourselves all the time, and I think that's part of the confidence issue, right? I think a lot of women are afraid to say anything, or they feel challenged, like they got to keep quiet. They don't want to say anything. But a lot of times, I think, for me, sometimes I'm the squeaky wheel, but I feel like what I'm saying is from my heart, and I want to see change in a good way, not coming from it from a negative perspective, but looking at it like, if we could try something like this, I think it would be very positive. And trying to make I think it depends on the situation, right? I think for the most part, I feel like things are evening out a little bit more for females too. I don't think that there's like, I mean, look, any company could have people that treat women differently than they do men, but for the most part, I think in today's world, I think women are definitely getting noticed more. They're getting advancements in their career. And doing things that they need to do. And then there's certain ways to be that way too, right? To make sure that you're being recognized and respected in the field. But that can happen to men too, to be honest with you. So I mean, I don't know. I think I've been in places where I felt like that, but then again, I feel like where I'm now or in other places, I don't, I don't feel that way, right? But um, because I feel like there's a lot of really strong women that I currently am surrounded by that I absolutely love on my team, and I think that that helps, right? I think it just depends, but it very well can be. There are very toxic environments that people are in, unfortunately. But then that's kind of like your clue to maybe do something about it. So that you're not living in that all day because it's exhausting coming home and cooking dinner and doing all the things you have to do on top of everything. Okay. Oh yeah. I mean, that's it does happen. And I'm very sensitive that to that as well. Like I had a great example of this is there was a beautiful girl sitting in the waiting room one time with me, and I don't look at people because of uh, their beauty or what they've done. I look at people individually, and I started having this lovely conversation with her, and she was telling me how much she hated California, that she wanted to go back to Dallas, and because the men in Dallas were better, nicer to her. And so we just had this nice little chit chat conversation. And then I got called back before she got called back. And I got up and I started walking. And she looked up at me and she said, "Thank you." And I said, "Thank you." And she said, "Yeah, thank you for talking to me because nobody ever talks to me." And I said, "Well, that's because you're beautiful. And some women have a problem with that. I don't, I tell people when I think they're beautiful. But it does, it happens sometimes. And it's very unfortunate because it's really unfortunate for the person who behaves that way because that behavior, unbeknownst to them, is often picked up by all the other people. They see it anyway. So it's better just not to engage in situations like that. Not at all. I mean, I think no, no. I mean, I always tell, even if I see somebody that's absolutely beautiful, I'm like, You're stunning. You're beautiful." What it doesn't harm me at all. I'd rather have somebody like that as a friend. You know what I mean? So Yeah, it's been a passion of mine for a really long time. It's a very true story. I had many executives that always work with me that would always tell me, Lila, every time your bosses told me that they work with you, that I was going to see a relationship sell. Um, and they would say things like, but I'm blown away at the relationships that you have and the people that jump up and give you a hug and say hello. And like that just doesn't happen. And honestly, for years, I blew that off because, like I said, I don't judge other people and think when I look at a beautiful girl, I'm like, she's beautiful, she's smart, she's technically sound. Like I just think of all my colleagues as that way. I don't sit there and think, oh, they must not be as good as me. I never even, my mind doesn't even go that way. Right. So I'm just assuming that they're just saying that because, when an executive comes to work with you, they have to say something's nice and then they tell you something that you need to work on. Right. And so I'm just thinking, I just for years and years, I blew it off. I just kept saying, that's just them saying something nice about me. I'm not any different than anybody else. I'm just like any other salesperson. And then it was finally two executives that really made me think about this a little bit more. They're like, you really need to think about what you do and teach other people what you do. So that birthed basically these 5 steps. I kind of thought about it like, well, how do I approach sales? And so, yeah, so I've got something coming up that we'll talk about, these, basically my step process that I go about when I try to sell something and how I process it. And hopefully it will inspire and help other people that are thinking about getting into this sales space. That for me, when I felt like I wasn't up to snuff to something, no matter which company I went to, I always searched for somebody that was doing it better or somebody that had already mastered where I wanted to be. And I sought them out and asked them, what did you do? How did you get there? Like I remember one of my very first jobs, we had to role play and everybody hates role plays, right? Because you see yourself on camera the first time and you're stuttering and you don't know everything and you're nervous because you're on camera. And so I remember we were given something that we had to sell that wasn't necessarily a pharmaceutical drug, but it was like a machine or whatever that we had to like also sell. And the guy that was one of our trainers was like one of the top guys in the entire company. So when we went in to role play, he was one of my trainers, and I told him, excuse me, that I wanted to knock this thing out of the park when I got out in the field. And I said, and so we'd have to role play my part, and then we'd have to role play that. And I said, how did you do it? And I literally asked him questions, and I said, can I do it? And he goes, yeah. I said, can I role play it with you? And he goes, okay, do it again, do it again, do it again, right? And so we would sit there and we would role play over and over and over and over till I listened to what he had to say because I wanted to use the words that he had to say, and then that built up my confidence as well, so that when I finally, got out there and got out in the field, it was actually pretty funny because I was selling these things like crazy. And the marketing department phone called me one day because, they were in Chicago, I was in California, and they're like, what are you doing out there? Like, you're one of the new hires that, like, all of a sudden you're just like slamming these things. What are you doing? And I said, hey, it was this guy named Tom, right? That was one of my trainers that I absolutely loved. And I'm like, I don't know. I just learned from the best, and I'm just doing what he did. So I just try. That's what I try to do, is I try to model. And then when I have team members, that are not doing as well, or I see that they have a lot of potential, I do the same thing with them. Let's work together. Let me see what you're doing. Let's strategize. Let's talk about the things that you've tried and what's worked, what hasn't worked, and maybe talk about some things that you could try that are different. Not me telling them what to do, because that never works, right? But just kind of trying to inspire them to, like, maybe try something different, or pick out things about them, or that they may be doing that might be hindering their performance, and trying to help enhance it better. Mhm. They're saying mid-March, maybe late March. We don't have an exact date yet, but yeah. Yes. It's called. No, let's not share it yet. So let's. Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, I'm a big proponent, love for single moms everywhere in the world, right? It's I always said if I won the lottery, right, that I would want to be like create like an organization and have angels for women to support them because it's a very frightening experience to be going through that alone. A lot of times, even if you have family, sometimes family just doesn't understand. So anything that I can do for female empowerment and help them and safety and I've been through a lot myself. So I think that's why I have so much passion to help I've always had the passion for the underdog, right? Um, so yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mhm. Well, thank you, and I've been very honored to be able to spend some time with you. I know you just a little bit personally, but what I know is an amazing person, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.